Recording has started. Okay. All right, so let me share the document here. So today is lab, as you know, in 362. We will be talking about, obviously on Monday or Tuesday, we started our topic of object-oriented programming in JavaScript. And you can see here, this is the slides that I went over. And today I'll talk a little bit about the homework assignment so that you can start working on it. Obviously, there's still a few things that we need to cover about this homework. So we'll do examples as needed, but today I kind of want to give some time if you have questions to help out with the homework, just kind of see where everyone is. But so this is the homework. I'm not going to assign a deadline yet for this one, or a due date. It might be a week from today, or it could be a little bit longer than that, so we'll see. So let me click on the Word document. All right, and as you can see, it's just one page as usual, and it's the standard grade calculator. Okay, so the standard grade calculator. All right, so ITS 362, the lab number 3, object-oriented JavaScript. So this is basically the approach or the topic that we've discussed this week. So the objectives to learn to use, object-oriented programming in JavaScript. You've seen examples of that. To learn to use JSON and cookies with JavaScript. So that's also something that we started to talk about on Monday. We still need to do a few more examples on that. And then to apply a variety of web technologies. And you can see how you're kind of combining things now, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. So everything is being combined together. So to apply these in an application. So basically, this is the same homework as the previous ones. You're going to rewrite the grade calculator. Okay, so the goal is, so the tasks, to rewrite the grade calculator HTML page such that it uses objects, okay, and retains the object data using cookies. Okay, so you're going to be storing some information in cookies. Remember, we also looked at the JSON parse and stringify. Okay. So rewrite the grade calculator HTML page such that it uses objects and retains the object data using cookies. Please use the HTML you created in Lab 2, right? So you have already the text boxes there. You have a little bit of JavaScript already, so you can reuse all of that and then just extend it. You may implement a save button to store the assignment data in the cookie. Make sure you have a way to demonstrate that the data is usually saved to the cookie. Okay, so you have to have some way of doing that. Maybe what you can do is have the data, have the default values, change them, save them to cookie, then have another button, clear the text boxes, for instance, something like that, and then reload the data from a cookie. So that might help. All right, so to accomplish this, so listen to the question. So make sure you have a way to demonstrate that the data is actually saved to the cookie. Can you populate the data on the HTML page from what's stored in the cookie, right? So what I just said. Each assessment, a lab, quiz, exam, participation, and so forth, can be modeled as an assessment object. So consider that, okay? Consider that. Maybe you want your objects to be, the abstract concept of an assessment. So I wouldn't recommend having an object for lab and an object for quiz and an object for exam, right? So that's what this is kind of implying. It's more implying that, maybe just have one generic one. So then whose class diagram would be basically the one that you see to the right? So if you look over here where I have the mouse hovering, so assessment, it would have a name, maximum number of points possible, and then the number of points earned. Okay, so that could be something to have. Let's see. You should use arrays to group the assessments. Okay, so you can do that. Use arrays to group the assessments into a single object of course grade. So now you're going to have for the course, you can have also an object called course grade. As I said, these are kind of suggestions. You might think of better ways of doing this. All right, but the idea here, you should have an object called course grade, and then you should use arrays to group the assessments into this single object. This object can include grade calculation, so methods, right? To calculate the grades automatically. A single top-level object can facilitate storing data into the cookie. So we still need to see how to do that. We'll do some examples of that later, but that would, we would grab the whole object with its data and stringify it, right? And then try to store it into a cookie. One tip is if an assessment's name is the same as the ID of the corresponding text box, you can make your coding life easier, right? So remember that, this is dynamic web development. And so the idea is that you can grab objects by their IDs. If you make the names of text boxes the same names as the assessments, if you remember last week, we talked about how you needed to have, if there's 10 labs, you need 10 labs. If there's 12 quizzes, you need to have 12 quiz text boxes, okay? So that's a suggestion. Given that the cookie does not accept native JavaScript objects, you should convert the JavaScript object to a JSON string, right? And that's something that we covered a little bit in the slides, but we haven't done examples of that yet, and we will. As I said, that's why this lab it's a little bit longer. I anticipate probably it'll be a 2-week lab. So you'll need to convert it into a JSON string before saving it to the cookie. So there's a question there. Yes, so I will start grading your assignments this week. So you'll start seeing that, okay? All right, so you should start, hopefully by next Tuesday. I don't know that I'll get everything I have. There's a lot of students in the class, and whoever I grade, you'll see your assignment, and then other people will see them a little later. It's just how I go. That's why, as I said, it's important whenever you grade that you follow the instructions, right? You do everything that I said. Don't use RAR, use WinZip. Make sure you ran your things in Firefox, because whenever I have I don't have WinRAR on this computer, and so that you're just making me get another computer, and it's just going to slow you down. So definitely make sure you follow those. But yes, I will hopefully have a lot of at least the first assignment graded by next week. Okay. All right. So what was I saying? So given that the cookie does not accept, I already said that. So we'll do the stringify, save it to a cookie. The same is true before you populate the data to the HTML page from the cookie itself, right? So now you have a string, you're going to need to parse it into an object. This time you need to convert the cookie data, JSON string, back to a JavaScript object, okay? And as I said, we've covered that in the slides. I still need to do examples of that. But today, my goal is actually to get you going on this assignment instead of just doing a whole bunch of random examples. So we'll get going on this. Next bullet, you should not use any JavaScript frameworks or libraries in this assignment. So for those of you that are advanced and you already know jQuery, please don't use jQuery yet. Right after this, the next homework is, I'm pretty sure, is all jQuery going forward. Okay. Remember, these 3 assignments were really a type of review and of your 110 and your programming skills. So they're meant to be pretty straightforward. And take them as that, as review. You also, the basic ideas as before, you should have a separate CSS file for any styles you need for this app. And now going forward, all your JavaScript code should be in a separate JS file. So I'll show you how to do that today in a separate JS file for the JavaScript. And I think I actually provided some code already. So we'll download that. I provided some starter code, I think. Yeah. And then after that, please follow good coding styles, you know, and adopt meaningful names, good naming conventions. Also avoid and minimize hard coding things, right? You know, just more generic things, I guess. And also make sure that, you know, you indent correctly. So make sure you indent correctly, and you can add, you know, your comments if you'd like. All right, as far as the deliverables, same as before, right? I need an electronic copy of your lab report Word document. That's not required, but I already explained why that is beneficial to you, with screenshots showing evidence of your code running. However, what is required is all your code files. So your HTML text file, your CSS text file, and your JS text file submitted to, that should say Brightspace. Please only use WinZip. So you're gonna put all your, don't give me a whole bunch of individual files, just put everything in a folder, zip it, upload it, and include your Word document in there as well, so that I can just, remember, I have to download your code and run it. So it takes me a while to go through everyone's homework. All right. So that's the homework, right? That's the homework. So before I start just going over, you know, as I said, I want to start just with this homework, doing a little bit of code, and then later on, give some open time for questions, and then after that, if time permits, I'll do more examples. Otherwise, I can save those for Tuesday, but at least you're all working on the assignment. All right, so before I continue, are there any questions, guys?
I have one.
Okay, hold on. Oh, okay, so one question is, there's a question on the chat about, yeah, so which homework is it that some students are requesting an extension for? I would assume it's the JavaScript. Yeah, Lab 2. Okay. So how are you guys doing with Lab 2? Are any of you still behind on that one?
I'm a little behind on it.
A little behind on it. So it's due. It's due tonight, but it stays open until Saturday. Remember that the way that I do things is I kind of give you like a soft deadline and a hard deadline. And my goal is that you try to always get it done by tonight, but I'm still going to leave it open for until Saturday, right? Is that, you don't lose points. I'm sure you know by
Excuse
now.
me?
You don't lose points if you
Excuse
say
me,
no.
Professor.
Hmm?
Excuse me. I have questions about the drop down in Lab 2.
But hold on, we're discussing this right now. So
Okay, sorry.
so what is the so until Saturday, that's still not enough?
I think by Saturday, that'd be okay.
Okay. Okay. So what about everyone else, guys?
I think that's fine. I'm sorry, could you say if there's a penalty again? If
There
we-
is no penalty.
No.
There is no penalty. That's what I've always said this, right? I set it open for tonight, but there's no penalty if you submit tomorrow. Now, I don't encourage that you don't try to submit, because what's going to happen is eventually you're always going to put it off for Sunday, and then you're going to ask an extent. You know what I mean? So my whole point is that you should always try to submit by tonight, but you still, if you have like some circumstance, then you can, you know, submit until Saturday. Make sense? Nice.
Yes.
So, oh, Sunday perhaps. Okay, so what about Sunday? I can do Sunday. Is that okay?
Yep.
Oh, okay, so
Yes.
let's do that then. So before I forget, okay, so can you all right, yeah, all right. So but usually though, I want to stay consistent with how I do the deadline. So it's always due tonight, stays open until Saturday, right? But today I will do, just otherwise it's gonna get really complex. Although I do prefer this to you guys sending me a lot of emails, all right? So that's definitely, because if you send me the homework via email, that's really complicated for me. All right, so let's see. So it's grade calculator, JavaScript ends. End date will be, yeah, so Sunday is the 31st, 11:59 p.m. Remember, that's 11 p.m. Central Time, Chicago time. So here we have, all right, so that's updated, okay, guys?
Understood.
All right,
Thanks,
great.
Calix.
Yeah, all right, so now other questions. Who has another question?
I have one.
Go ahead.
Since you use Notepad++, I was just curious, does that support arrow functions and const and let?
And what?
So some of the newer principles, like instead of VAR for variables, const and let.
I mean, you can write your code however you want, right? So you don't have to.
The reason I ask is for if I end up, because I use VS Code, if I type it out and submit it.
You can type it up in any editor that you want. Just make sure that what I will do is I will just grab your HTML file and run it on Firefox, right? So as long as it runs on Firefox, that's fine. But I will not open it on Visual Studio or anything like that. Okay.
Correct. And as for arrow functions, if you're grading the JavaScript portion, again, are you mainly going to do the HTML side then?
I will run, so the way that I do it is I just run your code and make sure it's functional. So I'm not going to be checking, you know, your, like every detail of your JavaScript, right? I'll just run it and I'll be looking for, you know, whatever the task is. So if you did objects, I'll make sure that you have the objects in there.
All right, thank you.
So what is your
Quick
question?
questions. Quick questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
Excuse me. I just want to make sure as we need to submit JavaScript file. Is the JavaScript file, the content can be the same as our HTML file or the text file? The code are the same.
Say that again, I'm sorry.
I mean, the submitted file for JavaScript, the JavaScript file can be the same as the text file. The code can be the same.
You have to submit, you know, your HTML, your CSS, and your JavaScript file, right?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
I mean that the JavaScript can just, the code can be the code inside the JavaScript.
Oh, so you mean embedded code versus a separate file?
Yeah.
Well, in this assignment, it actually says to use a separate file.
Okay, I see.
Did you read that there? In the previous one is fine, but in this one, you have to use a separate file.
Okay, good. I see.
Got it?
Yeah.
Any other questions? Guys, any other questions?
I think so.
No
All right, so
question.
remember, you know, all of this is just a review. We're going to be moving to jQuery, right, in the next lab, and we'll just take a look at how we can do things over there. So now let's go over on our Brightspace here. We can take a look at, I provided this file, so you can go ahead and download it. And it's just got just some ideas of how you can do your code. So I'm downloading it. Just give me a sec. I'm gonna. All right, so I'm gonna open this in Notepad++. Okay. And I'm going to share the document. All right, so this is the code that I provided on Brightspace, right? This is obviously not complete code, but it's supposed to be an idea of what you can do. You guys see that? So
Yeah.
for instance,
Yeah.
So for instance here, you know, you can create a variable, var course grade, right? And then you can create a function for the object assessment, okay? And then, you know, then you have, you know, this name type of homework. You can say something like, oh, this is a lab, this is a quiz. Then the maximum number of points earned. And then obviously here, these are the arguments that you would pass to it. So that kind of gives you an idea of how you can define an assessment, which is what the handout or the handout was really describing. Now, remember, I'm only giving you some basic like Lego pieces here, right? And you really, on your own, you have to build the rest. So for instance, here for course grade, I've given you also the idea of the object course grade. Then you can create the array grades, right? And then, you know, grades push. What do you push? A new assessment. So for instance, it would be exam 1, which is a type exam, and, you know, the max points possible. You see that? And then when you can have a function somewhere in there to initialize course grade. Another function another example that I provided here is, you know, you have get array index. So this might be a nice function. So you have an assessment, right? Or assessment name or whatever. And that assessment or course grade would have an object called grades, right? And then you can iterate through those grades. So you can grab each one, just like I think this actually we showed in class. And so you can see you grab by the index, you grab each individual assessment, you check that the name matches the assessment name, right? So this is the So you say, for instance, I want the index for lab 3. So then that's lab 3, and then I'm going to compare all of them until I find my lab 3. Then I find my index, and this could be useful because that way you can directly grab an assessment whenever you need it. Does this function make sense, guys? It's a type of a search all my grades and find out what the index is of the grade that I need.
Yeah, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, all right. Yeah, so this would be a function of, I don't know, if you have 100, you know, between 20 labs and 2 exams and 15 quizzes and all that, let's say you have 100 total assessments. So then your array would be of size 100. And that way you can find assessment 37. And 37 is, you know, lab 12. So it's a nice quick way of being able to retrieve the data. I think it's a handy function. And then button press, you know, course grades, right? And then now you, with the index, right, you find a particular one that you want and you change the value. Now this, I'm giving a lot of help in this exam, and sorry, in this lab, because I do think these are some of the more difficult elements of it, but I won't give us much help later on, okay? But here, this I think should give you quite a bit of a good structure to get started with this lab assignment. Are there any questions?
Not at the moment, at least.
No
At the
questions.
moment? All right, good. So this is what I want you to do. So today, you know, as I said, we're gonna do more examples of JavaScript of our review on next Tuesday. And yeah, so this homework I think will be due 2 weeks from today. Okay, so start working on it right now, and you know, share your screen. I can also create the what do you call them, the breakouts if you want to show me something or you want to ask specific questions. And then yeah, that's the plan. So let me know. So if you want me to create the breakouts, let me know. If you want to just share it, that's fine too. But you have an assignment at this point, work on it, or ask any questions about the homework that's due tonight. And then the rest of the examples of stringify, parse, JSON cookies, we will do on Tuesday. All right. So I will stop at this point, the video recording. Oh, before nobody leave, I have to do the